Hey Ael, remember me? This joke won't age very well if you develop dementia in the future. In that case, well, this is awkward. Moving on. Last episode you talked about permanence. Probably to little success. But you tried, and that's what counts. Today, I'll talk about remembrance. So, remember to mock me when you watch this back. But first, I should probably tell you what you're doing. Your plan is to build an archive, not just of video logs, but Minecraft as well, because you're that kind of insufferable nerd. You've always dreamed about having your own personal library. Imagine how cool that would be. Bookshelves as far as the eye could see, probably to the wall 10 feet away. Each bookshelf, like housed memories. One last thing before I talk about remembrance, and I promise it relates. I did some digging on the Library of Alexandria and found this pretty neat. Higher estimates say that the library had upwards of 700,000 books. Which sounds like a lot, and it is, but hear this. When the Library of Congress was digitizing books, they found that the average book had 300 pages and equated to about 8 megabytes a book. That would mean that, roughly speaking, and this number isn't perfect, but the Library of Alexandria would have 5,600 gigabytes of information. Now, like I said, these numbers aren't perfect. There's no way of really knowing how large the average text in the library would have been because, well, it's all been reduced to ashes. It could have been significantly less, or possibly significantly more. But it's a figure nonetheless. Now, guess how much data there is on the internet? In 2025, the year that this is recorded, it's approximated there's roughly 181 trillion gigabytes of data on the internet. That's 32 billion times more data than there was in the Library of Alexandria. There's probably more data on Yo Mama jokes found in social media comments than there was collective data in the Library of Alexandria. That's crazy to think about. So why do I bring this up, Ael? Well, it's because libraries are important. Remembering is important. And sharing is important. Think about how cool it is that we are able to cognitively recall and explore what happened 100 years ago, 500 years ago, heck, 2,000 years ago when the Iliad was first being performed. We remember that. That's something uniquely human. Sure, you can argue that within every living thing there is a DNA code that has millennia of alterations to its code, and that it can act as some form of remembrance. But the thing with this is that they don't cognitively think. Like these animals, these single-celled organisms, they don't cognitively think, 10,000 years ago, this happened to one of my ancestors, which set in motion a chain of events which resulted in me having thicker fur. Remembering is important. It's what makes us human. It's what sets us apart. And people have known this since they started painting on cave walls. Even if all someone were ever to write or record was fiction, they are still putting and leaving behind the memory of real values. And lines that, when inferred, could spur another to endless possibilities. Which, in kind of a cyclical way, brings us back to the topic of permanence from last episode. Long after all the soldiers had fallen and their memories had abandoned them, we still remember that Troy fell for a couple of melons and one sweet piece of cake. Sure, perhaps the Iliad is not to be taken as truth. It's largely myth, with perhaps some vague truths that of a war that was fought. But there's a reason Paris chose Helen, and there's a reason Helen was whisked away. I'm still not sure why Agamemnon did what he did to his daughters, but I understand why his wife did what she did to him. There's a reason Achilles withdrew from the fight, and another reason, altogether, as to why he regretted it all. Even if these stories aren't strictly true, the lessons, the morals, and the virtues that people infer in them are. The joy, the laughter, and the escape that they provide also are. But I suppose it's herein that lies the issue. In today's climate where anyone can broadcast anything, Helen's Melons and Cake by the Aegean Sea survive, while things of greater importance fade into the background. Achilles the hero is remembered, while Achilles the man is sent to the underworld, and only remembered by the cold, hard clutch of Patroclus's dead hands. It's great that there's so much data available at our fingertips, but it's also scary and largely unmoderated. There's enough data on the internet to call any fact into question, and when paired with the untrained eyes, this can become, well, very dangerous. The Library of Alexandria was carefully curated in order to preserve the best of the world's knowledge at the time, and as such, there was a standard to be met. And I mean, don't get me wrong, curated data has serious issues. The curators, mostly white men, get to decide what is legitimized. However, I also understand that as a society with so much data, we are completely overwhelmed. There's simply not enough time to be objective thinkers, or at least that's how it feels. And to make things worse, there's a misconception or pressure in today's push for individualism that one must be learned on everything. And when they are not informed, but attacked. We've never had the capacity to do or know everything that there was to be done or known, and even less so in a world so flooded that today the Ark wouldn't even float. One can survive, but never thrive. This has always been the case. Instead, we need a dualistic approach that allows individualism to fuel interdependence. To oppose Nietzsche, the Superman is dead. And I don't even care if I'm misquoting Nietzsche, or if I'm inferring something upon him in which he wasn't actually truly saying, this is my video, this is my journal. I'm allowed to infer and use his quote however I want. Kind of. Please be careful, readers. And, please don't use Nietzsche for anything bad. We only have enough time in this life to spend on the efforts that we deem worthy. Without each other, the world will remain largely unknown to us all, but with one another, we're fighting. I can't begin to speculate on an answer for this other than to hold those you love and who love you close. So, Ael, if one day, when you're old and gray, you can't remember your name, don't worry. The archive will be here to remind you what it means. And better yet, the people in your life will remember you. And Helen's melons. Man, were those some epic melons.